Singer, thank you very much for bringing this beautiful weather from Princeton University. What does it feel like to come back to Oxford?
I always enjoy returning to Oxford, partly because it's just a beautiful city, and partly because it has such good memories for me. I had a wonderful time at Oxford. I learned a lot. It helped me to develop both as a person and as a philosopher, so I love coming back to it.
I read that, when you were a student at University College, you had a special experience in the hall at Balliol College. Could you tell us more about it?
I certainly did. It was perhaps the decisive formative experience of my life, really. I had been attending a class, and after the class I got talking to one of the other students. It was a graduate class. He was a Canadian graduate student called Richard Keshen. And the conversation was interesting. It was about freedom and responsibility, and he suggested that we continue it over lunch at his college, which happened to be Balliol. So we went to Balliol, and the lunch there was a choice. You could have a plate of spaghetti, which had a kind of brown sauce on the top, or you could have a salad. So Richard said, does that sauce contain meat? And when he was told it does, he took the salad. So I noticed that, but I didn't say anything at the time, and we continued our conversation over lunch. I had the spaghetti, of course. After we'd finished that topic, I said to him, so why did you avoid the meat? Why are you avoiding meat? And I suppose I expected to get an answer that was something about he thought it was bad for his health, or perhaps that he had some strange religious views, like converted to Hindu or something, though he didn't look like a Hindu, I have to say. But he said that he just didn't think it was right to treat animals in the way that animals are treated when they're turned into food. And I'd never, vegetarianism was much less common than it is now, and I'd never met a vegetarian who gave such a straightforward answer that I could understand and relate to. And obviously I asked a few more questions, and he told me a bit about factory farming, which I was completely unaware of. It wasn't as far developed then as it is now, but it was still already quite developed. He introduced me to a couple of other friends of his who were vegetarian, and I started reading more about it. And within a week or two, I said to my wife, who was here with me, I think we have to change our diet, change what we eat. I don't think we can justify participating in a practice that is exploiting animals the way they're exploited to turn it into food. And so that really began my thinking about animals and the moral status of animals, and led to the writing of the book Animal Liberation, and to the work I've done in that area ever since.
So actually that moment has been very, very important in your life, especially in your research.
Absolutely. I think it was the first real issue in applied ethics that I took up not merely as an academic question, but as something that I really wanted to change the world about. And I thought it was important that the world should change, because it's a very large issue. We're talking about literally billions of animals being treated in ways that are not really defensible from an ethical point of view, as I became convinced. So that's a very important issue, and it was a neglected issue. There were other issues that I was interested in, like the war in Vietnam, questions about civil disobedience, questions about racism. They were being widely discussed, but the issue of the treatment of animals was really ignored at that time.
Yeah, it's actually a very impressive story. You had that experience in the hall of Balliol College at the University of Oxford. Now you are here at University of Oxford, and you are invited by Balliol College to celebrate the 750th anniversary.
Yes, that's right. It's the 750th anniversary, and I hope that it will mark that anniversary by making a further important ethical decision to be a pioneer, at least among Oxford colleges and English universities, in developing standards for the ethics of the food that it serves. I think that's an important thing to do.
What do you now think are the greatest threats to the world?
Well, if we're talking about the world as a whole, then clearly climate change has to be one of the greatest and most difficult threats for us to combat, because it requires cooperation from a whole lot of different nations, and it requires concern for the future. And I'm sure if future generations could vote, there would be an overwhelming vote in favour of drastically reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. But they can't, so we have to do it. This generation has to do it, and has to make some sacrifices to do it. Has to move away from what are currently the cheapest forms of energy for us, but of course not the cheapest in the long run. So that's a major issue. And the other one that I would mention is I don't think the risk of nuclear war has completely gone away, although it's much less prominent since the end of the Cold War. But I still think there is a risk that nuclear weapons will be used either by a nation or perhaps will fall into the hands of terrorists. And I think control of remaining nuclear weapons and reduction of the thousands of nuclear weapons that still exist is an important thing to do for safeguarding the planet's future.
Okay, finally, I'd like to ask you, Catherine, in such a busy schedule, how do you relax? In beautiful weather like we're having in Oxford now, I relax by going for a walk somewhere. There's lovely places through the university parks, along the rivers. There's beautiful places to get out in the countryside, and I really enjoy that. Thank you very much for being with us. Voices from Oxford, University of Oxford.
Thank you.